What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we finish up our talks on the Beastmaster Ranger, the one that brings along a literal animal to maul his or her friends, and I respect that, right? I think that that's a lot of fun, and we are going to be building one of those today, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I hope you are as well. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 4,000 by the end of this year. I really think that we can do it, but of course I need your help. Then of course make sure you share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. Also, please consider joining the channel as a member. It really helps me out to make the content that I do, and of course it gives you something really nice in return. At the very lowest tier, at the Bronze Snapper tier, that's right, I'm Dapper and you all are the Snappers. So of course, coming in just at that very bottom tier, you of course get all of my write-ups for all of my subclass fixes and all of my build guides as well. So today's video will have a build guide associated with it, and you will have access to that as well as my full library, and you'll have that forever. So you can download that, keep that, use it at your table, whatever you want to do. Helps to kind of follow along with the video, and it really helps to support me. If you would like to support a little bit more, then I very much appreciate it. Those at the Silver Snapper tier are going to, of course, receive everything from the prior tier. And of course, you are also going to get the videos 24 hours early, which is great. And you also get a special shout out during all of my videos, which is awesome. And then finally, at the gold tier, you get access to a special part of my Discord. And you also get to help me to choose video topics for in the future on variety builds and a couple of other things. So again, thank you to all of my members. I very much appreciate you. With all that out of the way, let's take a look at the build. So the Beastmaster Ranger, of course, was a little underwhelming, but not so much to where we felt like we needed to do a revamp. It's a great idea, right? As a Ranger, I think it very much should exist. I think that everybody wants to have an animal companion that he or she can bring along and go into battle and do all of these things. The problem is there are some scaling issues, and of course there are some mechanical flaws that are here and there, but it's totally okay. We're gonna make it work. And we're going to end up doing some really fun stuff with this. We're going to have some multi-classing, but it's very light and it's at a point where most people probably aren't going to experience it anyway. So this is mostly going to be Beastmaster, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun to go through. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Starting off, as always, we have our race. And I wanted to, of course, not do the whole custom lineage thing or the variant human and blah, 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 boring, whatever. I'm trying to not do that as much. There are going to be builds where I kind of have to, but this one I can afford to not. And so what I'm going to do is go with something really fun, and we're going to go with the Goblin. Of course, we're going with the version from the Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. So it got all of the buffs except for Fury the Small got nerfed, but that's fine. So of course, with this, we get things like Dark Vision, we get Fey Ancestry, which is great. Fury the Small, which is nerfed, but it's still okay. And of course, Nimble Escape, which Nimble Escape does, of course, somewhat trivialize our vanish feature that we get later as a ranger, but it's totally fine. I'd rather just go ahead and have it off the rip than have to wait until that level. That just seems way better to me because it's really nice to have. As far as our stats go, of course, just like always on the channel, we are going to be using our modified standard array. And so if your stats look different than mine off the start, that is totally fine. You may have to adjust if you use normal standard array, if you use point buy, if you use rolled stats, any other system, you'll probably look different than me. That's totally fine. Just adapt to your table in the order in which they are presented here. So we're going to put our highest stat into our dexterity. Second highest is going to go into wisdom. Our third highest is going to go into constitution. After that, it really doesn't matter, but I'm going to go with strength, charisma, and then intelligence. But like I said, you can really do whatever you want with those last three. And then of course we get 3+1s after the Monsters of the Multiverse book. And we're going to put those, of course, in all of our odd stats in order to bring those up to even numbers. So that's a really good start. I really like that. So yeah, as far as equipment goes, I'm just going to take a hand crossbow and some studded leather armor for now. I don't think I need anything really crazy on this build. This is more of a deterrent type of thing. We're not going in for insane numbers. You know, we're not actually going to be taking the sharpshooter feat here. We're not going to be doing anything insane for our damage numbers. We're really here as a support type of character within this chassis, and I think it can work. I think it can definitely work, and we're still going to be dealing okay damage, but we've also got some other things that are going on that are going to really help us out, and so we'll just have to see where that ends up. So let's start taking some levels. At level 1, we are going to be a ranger, and we're going to be a ranger for a while. Of course, we will talk about some other things that were possibilities and may have gone into some of the earlier drafts of this when we get to our honorable mentions at the end, so make sure to stick around for that. But here at Ranger 1, we are of course going to get Deft Explorer and Favored Foe, which gives us the canny feature. Remember, we are going to be going off of the new Ranger in all of our builds here. We're really kind of ignoring the old Ranger because it really kind of sucks, at least in comparison to this one. This one has plenty of flaws as well, but it's at least an improvement, so we'll take it. Deft Explorer, I don't think that I'm ever going to use it just because I don't need a worse hunter's mark going on here. If it wasn't concentration, I think it'd be okay, but because it is, I'm not a huge fan. Canny, however, is great, and so we're definitely going to take advantage of that. As far as a stat to choose for Canny, I don't really have one in particular for this build, so it's really pick your favorite. Then at Ranger 2, we're going to get our fighting style, and we're going to get spellcasting. For our fighting style, of course, we're going to take the archery fighting style, obviously. That makes it a lot easier for us to hit our shots. And then, of course, our spellcasting gives us some first level spells, which is great. I'm going to take some staples here, such as Absorb Elements, Cure Wounds, Good Berry, and of course, Hunter's Mark. These are all going to be great staples. They're just very consistent and they always do very well for us. So I don't think that there's ever going to be a downside to having any of these. Ranger 3, we of course finally get our subclass, and so we're going to get Primal Awareness and we're going to get Primal Companion. Primal Awareness of course gives us some extra spells to deal with, which is pretty great. We're limited in how many spells we have, and these are some of the greatest hits, so that definitely helps. And then of course we get Primal Companion here as a Beastmaster Ranger. So now we can choose amongst the 3 different stat blocks. We can of course summon a creature of whichever type we want and just kind of go from there. You're really open to do whatever you want. I'm going to say that most of the time we're going to go with Beast of the Land. I don't think that we're going to need to worry about doing Beast of the Sky type of things as far as like doing flyby, help action and all that. I don't think it's necessary. So we're just going to stick with just doing the Beast of the Land. And what's great about this is that we are a small race. That's the whole point of taking Goblin, is that we are small. Therefore, we can use whatever we choose here as a mount. So pick your favorite, whatever animal you think fits into this. But we can now actually have this as a mount, which is really cool. I think that's a lot of fun. Really, really helpful, I think, anyway. And we're going to have a great time with that. Next up at level 4, we are, of course, going to get our first ASI or feat. And you might be thinking that we're going to take Crossbow Expert here. However, we are going to do something a little bit different first. At this point, I think it would be good to pick up a finesse weapon if you can find one. So of course, a rapier is the obvious option, but if you can find something homebrewed or whatever, you pick that up. As long as it's got finesse, then we are going to be fine so that we can use our dexterity. We are going to take Mounted Combatant, and this gives us a built-in mount, which is fantastic. Mounted Combatant, of course, gives us a slew of useful things, such as advantage on melee attacks when we are attacking other non-mounted creatures. Now, of course, the creature does have to be small or smaller, so that may or may not come up. So just, hang in there. It may or may not happen. The bigger ones, though, are forcing an attack targeted at the mount to target us instead. Our mount isn't the best defensively, and so being able to do that is going to be very helpful. And of course, if there is an effect that forces the mount to make a dexterity saving throw, it of course basically gets the evasion feature, which is really, really nice for something that isn't all that tanky. So I think for all of that, that's a really great thing for us, and definitely can help to keep our mount that much safer, because our mount will actually have a little bit of offensive prowess to it. And of course we can use our bonus action right now to make an attack, which is pretty cool. And of course we will be a little more flexible with that once we get to higher levels. But for now, I think that's pretty decent. Now we are at Ranger 5 and we get extra attack. So now we can either choose to give up one of our attacks for our mount to make an attack, or of course we can still use our bonus action. Either way is fine here. I really don't have an issue with either side. Both make total sense. Extra attack is fantastic. We also get second level spells at this point, which is great. And so just some standouts for me are Enhance Ability, Healing Spirit, Lesser Restoration, and Spike Growth. All of those are going to be fantastic options for a slew of reasons. I'm trying to pick a good balance of offense and defense, and I feel like the Ranger really gives us that. The list isn't all that long, but it's potent enough to where I think we really can get by. So I think that all of this is really great. At Ranger 6, of course, our Deft Explorer feature gives us roving, which of course makes us be able to move farther, which is always great. Increasing our walk speed is never going to be something I'm going to complain about. And so this is perfect. We are a very fast goblin and I love it. At Ranger 7, we get exceptional training. And remember, we're going to be ignoring the first half of this. However, now the attacks made by our mount are going to be counted as magical, which is great. That is going to allow us to get around some of the most common resistances in the game. And that feels really good. It makes its attacks actually worth using for once. And I think that's a lot of fun. At Ranger 8, we are of course going to get another ASI or feat. Now I'm going to take Crossbow Expert. We are now able to make an attack on our bonus action with our hand crossbow if we want to, or we can have our mount make the attack then as well. It also allows us to fire at melee range, which can also be really nice. Of course, we don't get advantage on it if the creature is small because that's only a melee weapon, but we can fire within melee range, which is good. If we need to stay in range and let our animal companion make some attacks and then we make some attacks, we can stay in melee and it's okay, right? And of course we can redirect attacks away from our mount in order to keep it alive. So that's all really, really nice. I like all of that. At Ranger 9, we of course don't get any features, but we do get third level spells, and things like Elemental Weapon, Revivify, and Summon Fae are all great. Summon Fae is a really fun new-ish addition to D&D, and what's awesome about it is that we can have yet another ally going around and doing things, but it doesn't cost anything for us to tell it what to do. It does of course move immediately after us, and so it's almost got the same rules as our animal companion, but there's no action required to tell it what to do, which is fantastic, meaning that we still have the flexibility with our animal, with our primal spirit here to do what it needs to do, and we also can benefit from the Fae. So it's really great being able to kind of double dip on that kind of thing. It feels really nice. So definitely take that if you don't take any of the other ones. At Ranger 10, we of course get our final feature for Deft Explorer, and that is Tireless. So of course we are able to negate exhaustion easier, which may or may not come up. We'll just have to see. But it's decent. It definitely could help in a setting where exploration is a lot more the focus, and so I definitely think it could be nice. We also get Nature's Veil, which just makes it easier for us to hide. It's fine. I think I'm not really blown away by this feature, but yeah, it's fine. At Ranger 11, we get Bestial Fury, and of course this basically gives multi-attack to our ally here. So what's great now is that we can attack, we can give up one of our attacks for it to make two, and then we can make a bonus action attack because of Crossbow Expert. So that's pretty good. I think that's going to be generally a good use of our attacks unless we are only at range, in which case we just make 3 attacks. However, we need to do that. But ultimately, I think that's pretty cool. At Ranger 12, we're going to get another ASI or feat. I'm going to bump my dexterity. That's going to help my AC. It's going to help my ability to hit. It's going to deal extra damage. It's going to be great. So I definitely think that that is the way to go. And I really don't think I need any more feats. Yes, Sharpshooter would be great, and it would definitely help with our damage. But honestly, I don't think that I need it for a build like this. If you want to take it, more power to you. We'll talk about it a little more in the honorable mentions. But I really think that for a build like this, we need to focus a lot more on the support aspect, on zooming around the battlefield on our mount, and just kind of dealing a bunch of damage, which is great. So I really like that. At Ranger 13, we of course get no features, but we do get 4th level spells. Conjure Woodland Beings is of course a huge staple. Freedom of movement is nice, and so is Stone Skin. These are two that I don't always recommend, but they definitely will come up a little bit later, so definitely stick around for that. And then finally, Summon Elemental. If you wanted to use that over Summon Fae, it's definitely an option, so definitely consider that. Ranger 14, we get Vanish, which we have negated most of, so yeah, it's nowhere near as good as what it was before, but it's still okay. Then finally, Ranger 15, we get Share Spells. So Share Spells is now going to allow us to, whenever we cast a spell on ourselves, it also targets our ally. Now, there are some weird things on how this works that aren't really addressed by the rules, so you may have to talk to your DM about this, in that if you cast a concentration spell on yourself, it is assumed that you are still the only one concentrating, even though it is affecting both creatures. There are other things that are like your aura spells. If you are to pick those up that can affect multiple creatures, those are a little funky in how they work. So just talk to your DM and make sure that you all are clear on how the mechanics of all this work. But basically, it affects both of you. So it goes beyond, you know, cure wounds on yourself, and then it cures the animal. There are a lot of more creative ways to do this, and we're going to explore that a little bit as we now begin to look elsewhere. We are 15 levels in, and we now are, you know, just feeling that much more drawn to nature. We need to be a part of it, right? We've been using it and using it and using it. Now we just want to embrace it and let it fuel everything within us. We're going to take some Druid levels as we finish this out. At Druid 1, we are of course going to get Druidic and spellcasting. So Druidic is going to be the secret language of Druids. Of course, if you are not familiar with the Druid class, I of course did a whole guide up in the iCard above for you. And of course the playlist has all of the subclasses that I went over there, which is awesome. Then, of course, with spellcasting, we're going to pick up things like Druidcraft and Thunderclap. Thunderclap is cool because, again, it is a self-targeting thing. And so your Thunderclap is going to not only affect yourself, but it's also going to blow up from your mount, which can be interesting. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And then for first level spells, Fairy Fire, Healing Word, and Thunder Wave for the exact same reason. So that's pretty cool. I think there are some interesting combos that you could do to try to catch creatures in between these two, or hit them with two at the same time. Pretty interesting. I like it. At Druid 2, we of course get Wild Shape, which we're really not going to use all that much in this build, just because the creatures that we would be able to turn into are not going to be good enough to hold up here. We also get a bonus cantrip, just kind of pick your favorite with that. We also get Natural Recovery, which is pretty cool. Natural Recovery, of course, allows us to get back some spell slots, which is pretty good. It's kind of like Arcane Recovery from the Wizard. It works slightly differently, so make sure you read that wording. I went into it a lot when I talked about this specific druid, which I'll talk about in a second. There is a small distinction between Arcane Recovery and Natural Recovery. And so make sure you read that very carefully. And then finally, Wild Companion. Basically, we can cast Find Familiar, which is never going to be a bad thing. I definitely am on board with that. So with this, of course, we are taking Natural Recovery, which means that we have taken Circle of the Land. Now, it hasn't been long since I have looked at, nature clerics, and we've looked at Circle of the Land druids, and land druids get a lot of hate, I feel like. And so I'm going to be representing them here today. And there's definitely a reason, and you'll see why here in just a second. When we get to level 3, of course, we don't get any features, but we do get some spells here. And so we get Invisibility and Pass Without Trace for free. That places us in the Grasslands Druid, which is pretty cool. It's kind of basic, but there's a big reason why we're choosing this. Number one, Invisibility. Then we can target both ourselves and our animal companion, which is pretty cool. We've got Heat Metal, Hold Person, and of course Summon Beast, yet another summon spell. Of course, you can choose amongst any of those to use at any given time. They're all pretty cool. Next up, Druid 4, we're going to get our final ASI or feat. I'm going to bump Wisdom here just to get that up as high as I possibly can. And then finally, level 20, Druid 5, we are going to get our 3rd level spells, which are Daylight and Haste. Yes, we can cast Haste on ourselves, and it also affects our mount slash ally slash whatever you want to call it. So if you had a bear before, now you have Cocaine Bear, and it's great. So I think that this is going to be a lot of fun to be able to have the haste on both yourself and your animal companion. Definitely a lot of fun there. Then Aura Vitality, another interesting one to target yourself with that also works on your animal companion. Conjure animals, erupting earth, and then of course if you did not pick up Summon Fae earlier, you could also have it here. So you got 2 different options for that. So that's our build for today. Let me know what you thought down below. I hate that it takes 20 levels just to get haste on this thing, but it's cool. It's fun. I think that being able to have haste on your animal companion definitely could be a ton of fun. Is it OP? No. Is it fun? Absolutely. And that's what matters. So that's what I'm interested in. One thing that's interesting too is that with this multi-classing, we are actually going to get a 6th level spell slot, which means that your Summon Fae could be cast there and it get a 3rd attack for its multi-attack. So that's also something to think about. I think that that's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely consider doing that. So let's take a look at our honorable mentions before we finish out for the day. For races, it's a little bit general with this because there isn't really a specific race that works with this in particular all that well. So let's take a look at an elven race. Any of the elven races really are going to be fine here. I'm usually drawn to something like the Eladrin personally, maybe even a half elf. Either way is fine because elven accuracy of course is a thing, but I didn't want to focus on that for this. But in general, that's going to be good, especially on a ranger. And then of course, any really other of your smaller races are going to work. Any small race is going to be fine because you can still then mount your animal companion, which is pretty cool. You can also go the route of grabbing some race that has enlarge reduce built in, and then that way you can actually enlarge your animal companion and then ride it. But of course it's limited on duration, so that's probably not the most optimal option all the time. And plus, you know, break concentration and then it's gone and you can't concentrate on other things. So I just think having a small race here is going to be the best option overall. Next up, of course, for other feats, Sharpshooter is the main one that we've been talking about. Sharpshooter, of course, is a massive increase to your damage, but on this build, I just don't know that it's necessary. Of course, if you want it, take it. But I think that having more of a support type of thing and allowing our animal companion to shine here is really the focus, and so that's why we didn't do it. So I think it's cool. Then of course Piercer is also going to be great. If you're using both a rapier and this, then both of those are piercing damage, so you would kind of be able to double dip there. Piercer of course helps with crits and a couple other things. Really cool, really great. If you've got your ASIs off and need a +1, Piercer is an amazing option for you. And finally, other classes that we could have multi-classed into, of course, Fighter. If you want to go a couple levels in Fighter, this of course gives you Action Surge, and so that way you have a ton of attacks to make, which of course you can replace one of those with your animal's attacks, which is pretty cool. It's a little boring, I think, for this subclass. So, I mean, it's fine, I guess, but whatever. Then the other thing to consider is if you can use Homebrew and you would rather go with Cleric rather than Druid, you could consider the Blood Cleric from the Matt Mercer book, from Tal'Dore's Guide. This actually does carry haste with it, as well as a bunch of other things. It has a feature called Blood Puppet. I mean, that's kind of gross, right? But if you're interested, I did do a video on this a while back, and that will be up in the iCard above if you want an explanation as to what that does. It's really interesting. Matt has an obsession with blood things, blood hunter, blood wizard, blood cleric, blood, all the blood things. It's very strange. But yeah, definitely check that video out so that you can see how that works with this, but I'm not going to include that in the main video because it is not technically official material, and we try to stick to official stuff on the channel for the most part. So that is all for our video today. Of course, tomorrow we have our battle for week 3 of the UNPL Pokemon Draft League. Make sure you check that out. I work really hard on those videos and I don't get a ton of views on them. So please make sure to check that out. It's basically fantasy football, but for Pokemon, and we have a really good time. Then of course, next week, we're going to be moving on to another subclass with Ranger. Until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.